Anne Motet. But also welcome to Catherine. That now I have to practice because some of you I only met once. So I think, if I remember good, you're Ivo. No, then you're Mark. This is Mark, Donald, Andrea, Emmanuel, Ivo, Emmanuel. Welcome to this panel discussion. So I hope you will enjoy this discussion. No more slides, just people chatting and talking about things we actually already discussed. So the key issues addressed in the previous sessions, we'll try to follow up on those key issues. From the people online, if you want to interact, if you hear something, just pop in please. And also, that's also the case for you. And we can interact if we manage to keep the answer short. That's always the case. Let me first, because I'm going to do the introduction of the people, but not all 8 at one time, because I'm boring, I know. So let me introduce first Anne Motet, online, an agronomist with a PhD in agro ecosystems. She currently works as Livestock Development Officer with the FAO, where she co-leads development and application of an assessment framework for sustainability in agriculture that is based on agroecology. Andrea Furlan, socio-economic analyst at the Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development of the European Commission, coordinating conversion of the Farming Accountancy Data Network to the Farming Sustainability Data Network, activities with the Joint Research Center to provide support to CAP environmental objectives for the Commission services and Member States. And Dr. Donald Murphy-Brogan, a graduate in General Agricultural Science with a career spanning 4 decades, 3 countries and different roles in the space between public investment in research, farm innovation and policy. Work focuses on agri-food systems, policy and management of agronomic research. And currently is also the science coordinator of a related project, Legends Translators. First topic to discuss. First topics about assessment frameworks and indicators. How can they drive the transition to sustainable agri-food systems? So we've heard about the assessment frameworks, indicators and tools. We've used a wide range within the impact of criteria to assess and monitor crop diversification. Nevertheless, some dimensions are less covered. For example, nutrition or social aspects. And scales broader than the farming system are always a bit complicated. And then you have that other limitation, the one of the availability of data. They rely on the availability of much data. And that data is on farm data, but also pedoclimatic data, socio-economic data, whatever data, depending on the framework or tool you use. So to start with you, Anne, in order to support the development of more agroecological systems, there is a need to include the value chain and the territory in this kind of multi-criteria support systems. So how can that multi-criteria support systems overcome this challenge while remaining operational at a farm level?
Hi Daniel, thank you for the question. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very good.
Thank you. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm going to talk from the perspective that I have in FAO And we've been building this multi-criteria assessment framework for the past 2 years because our member nations asked us to produce something like that in support of policy making for agroecological transition. And so it's really from this experience that I'm going to talk, and I hope it's relevant somehow also for you in Europe. What I saw from what you guys did in Diver Impact is that you already have multi-criteria. It was an objective. You don't only have indicators like the ones you can find in Eurostat, isolated indicators or the FADM, and you have agro-environmental and structure, farm structure and information together. This is the first step. What we learn in our process is that agroecological transition, they also require information at value chain, at community, at territorial level. For example, we saw that access to market, access to platforms of knowledge, whether women and young people are included in those platforms or in the value chain. Also, the whole enabling environment in terms of what we call responsible governance. And we have those 10 elements of agroecology in FAO that were defined in order to include this enabling environment, whether it's social or economic. And this is for where you start. Then in terms of evaluating the performances, you also need to know if the system, the way you just described it, empowers those women, empowers the young people. What are the nutritional outcomes? We used to think that we were okay in Europe in terms of food security and nutrition, but we do know that we have serious nutritional challenges for the young people, but also not only for women. We know that we have between 20 and 30% of women who suffer from anemia in Europe, and so we are facing also nutritional challenges to address, and this is part of the transition. So this is a big challenge, farm level, territorial level. We have this as a big problem in the development of our assessment framework. We had to discuss this with the different stakeholders. It was not easy, but it is possible to keep, from our experience, to keep the farm as the basic special unit while collecting information and generating information that is relevant and valuable at territorial community level. For example, you can ask the farmers whether they are part of knowledge networks, how those knowledge networks operate, so you know already what kind of information will arrive to them. How do they do with supply and how they market their product, how far they go, how long are the value chains. What do they know about their food culture, their cultural traditions and food traditions in the place where they live, in their territory? And to finish, I think this kind of information also makes sense for policymakers, but they do only if those results that you have from your assessment framework are interpreted by the community, with the community. If it's only scientists coming with new results that are not owned by the communities, by the farmers, and by the other stakeholders, then I'm not sure they can make a difference at policy level. And the last point that we realize also in this process is that you have to keep it simple. We do have, we reviewed about 15 different assessment frameworks at global level that cover all sorts of dimensions of sustainability, but one basic principle from all the consultations we made is keep it simple, don't address all the dimensions, try and address a broad range of dimensions, but give priorities. Whether you want to talk about biodiversity, climate change, nutrition, try and keep it at least as simple as possible, maybe not more than 10 or 20 indicators, otherwise you're going to lose everybody. So, I mean, that's really empirical as a response, but I hope it can help. Over to you.
Yes, very good to have. So, to summarize a bit, keep it simple. Take care of ownerships. They should feel owner and make the farmer the starting point, the farming system the starting point from your assessment. Thank you, Anna. Andrea. So when I introduced you, yes, give him the microphone, please. You're working on the farm accountancy data network to the farm sustainability data network. One of the limitations for multi-criteria is the accessibility of data on agricultural practices, pedoclimate and socio-economic context. How could your work, your data networks, allow to face this challenge?
Yeah, so do you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Basically, first I can explain what is FSDN, what will become. In the intention, now FADN, I think you all know it, is focused only on accountancy and economic information. There are already some environmental information, but are a bit derived, a bit put in a second stage. FSDN will be an evolution, first to include variables which are environmental and social, so also on workforce and other data like this. But then there is much more, because we will try also to modernize the system of data collection, also including data sharing, so helping the liaison agencies or the member state to get data which are already collected, I don't know, in Ajax, in national databases, etc. We will try to make more useful this data for analysis, policy analysis and research, and also to have a feedback to farmers, so to go in the same direction as we said before, to have better targeted advice to farmers participating, but not only to all farmers to use the result, also for benchmarking, etc. So basically, the big advantage will be that in the same farm we will get the accountancy data that are taken normally now, but also these environmental and social variables, so it will be possible to do an assessment at farm level. The database, of course, will continue to be individual, and also the idea is to share, to have better analysis with other individual databases. So we are working, for instance, on a database for getting more individual data on intervention and CAP applications, and also with IFS, so with the structural statistics from Eurostat. So really to try to modernize also the policy analysis link to these different dimensions. The only thing is that FSDN will take time, because now we are focusing on working on the basic regulation. We have 3 regulations behind FADN. We will adapt the basic regulation that is set in the framework, so there are no variables there, and this will be done for an adoption by June, and then we will start the discussion with the Council and the Parliament. And in the meantime, we are working internally on an analysis on the variables, and then this work will start really after the autumn. So we foresee to have, after completing the legislation, the first year of data collection probably in 2025, but then we will see how it goes, also with the discussion.
Thanks, thank you, Andrea. Let's continue to Donald. So, actually, the question we prepared is, if we succeed in the implementation of real multidisciplinary thinking, what is it actually, real multidisciplinary thinking?
It's the ability of each individual to think in a systems way using several disciplines.
Okay, thanks. And if we...
It's more than multidisciplinary working, because you can have separated. The key is that each person, each
yes.
actor can think across systems.
And how would that affect the assessment frameworks we have around here?
This is part of my briefing for you, was it? And I didn't have this question in mind when I wrote that. But I think the key thing to what you have here is a system which is very complicated. And I think Einstein said, in order to make something simple, you have to really, really understand the system. And everybody involved must have a system, some systems understanding of it, so as to make it simple. And when you make it simple, you can then come up with indicators that identify the indicators that are relate to what is driving the system. What's driving our system is nitrogen and plant protection products. And phosphorus. Those are the elements that are driving the system. And if you understand that and understand how they flow through our systems, then you can come up with indicators that tweak the system in a way which is easy to administer, easy to measure, but has profound implications. And we see this now. We see it now this year. All of a sudden, for instance, in Ireland, clover is sold out, clover seed. Why? Nitrogen price. Nitrogen price. That's the only reason. And the Irish ACUS, if you like, or the knowledge community, had difficulty in supporting clover over the years. They blew hot and cold on it, but now the price of nitrogen has reached the stage where it's just going to happen. And this comes back to Alan's presentation today. If you know how the system operates and simplify it, you will find ways of tweaking it.
Thank you, Donald. Let's continue to the next topic, and I first would like to introduce two people more from the panel. I see Michael Wolf has also joined, responsible for the coordination of DG Agri's research and innovation portfolio related to bioeconomy and forestry. Before joining the European Commission in 2019, he worked in different positions for the Austrian Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, and also Ivo Hostens, Technical Director of SEMA, the agricultural machinery industry, and Secretary General of European Society for Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering. Main focus is on digitization and new technologies. And Inge, I can imagine that you also want to contribute, so take floor, because we're going to discuss the adoption of research and agri-systems to guide agri-food system transition. So Diver Impact emphasizes that the key role of agri-systems, as well as the role of multi-actor and co-innovation approaches to support crop diversification and transition towards sustainable agri-food systems at large. So it's important to have that. It also identified the need to adapt current research practices as well as their governance. Michael, maybe to start with you. How could you use the Diver Impact progress and learning in the adoption of current and future research programs to guide agri-food system transition? So do you learn something from Diver Impacts for future research programs?
Yeah, good afternoon first of all. It's a pleasure to be with you. I had already a chat with some of you in the morning. Now I have to join online. But this is really a very important topic for us. And what I can say here is that, and we discussed it a lot also this morning, we have actually already, let's say, we are all aware that we need to accelerate the transition to sustainable, also more resilient and competitive farming systems. And in our scientific community, at least I believe so, we all agree that crop diversification is a key pillar of such rather holistic and also environmentally sustainable production systems. However, we also see that in practice, this is not adapted, despite all its benefits. Crop diversification is still hindered by many different barriers. Let it be technical, organizational one, or maybe institutional barriers. And we have to overcome those. And we really believe that we have to bring all actors along the value chain, from primary producers to retailers and consumers, together, and we have to move in the same direction towards those sustainable food systems. So we need the right people, we need to bridge the gap between science and practice, we have to learn from each other, co-design solutions and really demonstrate the benefits of crop diversification. Otherwise, we cannot expect that this will be taken up in practice. And I mean, what I can see from dairy impacts is that you have followed quite systemic approaches, and we need more of them in the future. We really have to pay attention to real problems of farmers and also opportunities, of course, and we have to empower them to develop their individual long-term strategies adapted to local conditions. And this is also beyond time-bound research projects. So in the morning we discussed already that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. What works well for one farmer might not work for others. For example, you have mentioned in the morning that certain crop diversification strategies attracted wireworms. So obviously in certain regions and with certain crops you need other strategies than somewhere else. So this is really important to keep in mind also for our research program. And with our multi-actor approach we are trying to follow it. And this is a key requirement in many project calls. So we also have reinforced this and streamlined it in the Horizon Europe. The multi-actor approach is now a eligibility criterion, and it is implemented across cluster 6, and we see quite an increasing number of projects and budget share. So I think this is very important, and I think also Inge will maybe mention the AKIS. This is also something we try to support, also through Horizon Europe. We know that cooperation between science and practice, but also with the involvement of farm advisors, is of crucial importance. Without the multiplicators, we will not achieve the impact on the ground. So this is what I would say in a general term.
Thank you, Michael. And now I want actually to make a step to another point of view and ask a question to Ivo. I think you're from your position, you're looking from another point of view. How do you see, how does a topic like crop diversification challenge research priorities we have now within the upstream part of the value chain? Is it, should put it to the top? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, we had this question in advance. I had to think about it, but there are two things that I certainly want to. It's not working. It's on. It's green.
It's good.
Two things I want to put forward for the long term. You have been working in a multi-actor project, which probably you know it's difficult. You think in different ways. And I like what has been said about system approach, system understanding. If you want to go beyond this little club and you want to go to multiple actors, you somehow have to explain the concept better, you have to understand the terms, even understand the barriers, the limitations, the options. Even if it's for the assessment of what you're trying to do as a concept of crop diversification. And in that sense, I want to stress the need for engaging as well in development of standards. And I want to mention it because I've seen in the EU standardization strategy that they are thinking about funding pre-normative research. I don't know how this will be implemented and if it will be implemented, but as industry definitely we are in favor. We live by standards. If we talk to each other and said, how did you handle this? Well, I used this standard. If the other person knows that standard, immediately he knows what exactly he did and why he thinks in a specific way. And I know it's a difficult step, but I want to say this as well because I know in ISO, for instance, they're doing the exercise. They're looking at, okay, sustainability, wow, big word, what is it? So they make the diagrams of all the aspects that might be related. It's not purely on, for instance, machinery. And then they will make selections. If you're not there, it might be that crop diversification will get somewhere in the corner. Well, it might be important for understanding this concept also for the development of machinery, for instance. And I know that some manufacturers are active there, and some of them are in crop diversification. They are looking into how machinery can be integrated in for instance, strip crop. But these people are paid from their companies. Often they're senior guys, because thinking in concepts is often much more difficult, and then putting it also down in a very structured way is very difficult. And I think it's a challenge for research, but I think they should be more involved in such pre-normative research. So that's I think one aspect that I think might be taken along in research programs. The other thing is, of course, that's one of my dadas is digital farming. We all understand that we increase complexity. The more we want to do flotations or intercropping or whatever, it increases complexity in every aspect. Also in the use of machinery, but also in the farm management, the use of your fleets, whatever, the relationship to your chain. And digital farming can be a support in that. But it means we need to go for more interoperable networks, because now we have a lot of platforms, and a lot of these platforms can be used, for instance, as well for a lot of the tools that you develop. You have some very good tools, but once the project dies, this tool dies normally alongside. I've been in a number of projects. We have an issue. The Commission knows it. The Commission also tries to see, can we not come up with more kind of digital frameworks to fit it in. And the digital, the development of these interoperability networks will allow for much better, trustworthy, easy, automated data exchange, also within very complex use cases, like for instance on certain crop diversification practices. And because we are looking for using it for use cases like, I want to have all the actors in crop spray, in spraying activities, I want them joined in, so that whatever's in the label is understood by the machine knows how to act, the machine will record what it did in a trustworthy way, and that data can go to the authorities, business to government, data exchange, so that farmer can prove compliance by this data. I know that the Commission is really desperately looking for data, more data, and remote sensing is one aspect, but there's so much data already there that could be used if it's done in a secure network of people that can trust each other. And trust me, it's not easy, because we're talking about brand independent data sharing. And that's the difficult aspect of it. But because of that, once it's outrolled, then you can start working on such use cases. And actually this pre-normative research can actually help them, because you can develop specific use cases that can then be put in a more digital format and can increase dramatically the uptake of new concepts and new technologies and new methodologies. Sorry that took so long time.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Okay, this is to react or to add on what Michael said from your perspective as also a key player in this AGIS and the programming of new research programs.
Yes, well, in fact our AGIS currently is programmed under the CAP, so we have an obligation for all member states to improve their AGIS, so that their researchers, their advisors, their CAP networks who have all the information on operational groups and multi-active projects from all over Europe, that they work together. So the definition of AGIS is even broader than that, not just advisors, researchers and the CAP networks, but we think they are core. But officially, what is AGIS in our CAP regulation for the future CAP, as from next year, all those who use and produce knowledge. So you can include, of course, all farmers, all kinds of organizations, farmers organizations, cooperatives, people in the supply chains, processors, but also biodiversity, environmental issues. So it goes really very broad. And our point of view was that, and it's not my point of view, it's in fact the point of view of the researchers from the SCAR of already, I think 15 years ago, that we are producing research that does not reach the farmers and that does not influence the activities of the farmers. And that's exactly what we need to change. And that's why we need these knowledge systems and this innovation to get to the farmers And the best way to do it is, I've already heard the word here today, is co-design, to get them really involved into designing a new solution in order to come to this transition. And in this way we motivate them together with the other experts from the ACIS who have something to contribute. It's not the more the merrier, it's you pick out clear objectives, something you want. Let's take strip cropping, we've been talking about that a lot today. So if you want to introduce strip cropping as a more sustainable way of farming, you have to get your farmers on board, and then a number of specialists, whoever they are, researchers or maybe machine builders, or their advisors that still need to be convinced. And you put them together in an operational group or at the EU level in a multi-actor project, and you ensure that they work together from the beginning to the start, that the farmers don't feel like directed from above, that they really feel they can contribute, and then you get this psychological effect of co-ownership. They say, this is our solution, we have helped to build this. They bring in practical knowledge, which otherwise, if you would not take that into account, it would hinder the application. So coming out of that, you have results and solutions that are really immediately applicable. And you also have already the enthusiasm of those farmers that have been involved. We have data from operation groups that around one operation group with a number of farmers in it, there is a third circle, as they call it, of sometimes up to 100 farmers who go regularly to visit the trials, and who on their own farm copy paste a little bit, try to do the same and see if it works. So you really have impact on your farming population, and you can change the mindset of both farmers, and not to forget advisors, because also advisors are sometimes a bit stuck in their old manners of advising. And if you want to really go to sustainable food systems, we have to make many steps. And it's really not useful if you do that with researchers alone. We have to do that together, as Michael also said. And what I also picked up from Anne is that it's really important to keep the farm as a basic unit, because you cannot change towards a more sustainable food system if you forget to take in the farmers. They have to be involved, they have to be convinced, because they will have to put steps to go to crop rotation, strip farming, less pesticides, less nitrates, you name it. Everything begins with the farmer, and they have to feel that they are respected, that their knowledge is used, and that they, at an equal level, and this is the big difference with applied research, that at an equal level they can come with the entrepreneurial ideas to look for the solution together with the other relevant experts. And to give you an example, we had an operational group in Ireland going to protect the hen carrier habitats. It were the farmers and their advisors who came up with the idea, if we put licking blocks to add the micronutrients to the cows there on these uplands that need to be protected and kept open, we will have higher profitability. 20-30% higher profitability is enough to make a farmer put his cattle there. So these are simple entrepreneurial ideas that I suppose others would not come up with. So we also need them in order to bring in fresh ideas so that we get applicable solutions and that we can convince them to change their approaches.
Yes, thank you for your plea to really involve farmers as a basic actor in this multi-actor approach to change together. Let's go on. Still two people to introduce. Catherine Mallet, founder and managing director of Cultivate, and she will talk about it a bit more later on. and Mark Rosier. He holds a Master of Science in Economics from the KU Leuven and London School of Economics. He's looking back on 25 years of experience as internal consultant and board member in agri-food companies, agri-food investors and professional associations. And since 2016, he's Managing Director of MRFA Consult, which serves its clients with independent, evidence-based and applicable advice on strategic management. So, and the third topic we're going to discuss, and we have four, and we are over time, I know, but we are the last, so. The third topic is about how to stimulate, support the coordination of value chain actors. So we talked about crop diversification, still a bit difficult. We talked about value chain, still a bit more difficult. That's my summary. The session on barriers from Philippe highlighted that crop diversification should be considered at each component of the value chain. But we are not there yet. Also in the value chain. So coordination between actors to articulate their strategies in a consistent and dynamic manner is crucial. They have to talk together. The role of trust and novel contracts was emphasized during the session of Philippe and his colleagues. Overall, it is challenging and seems to be easier for short value chains compared to longer value chains.
Involve this customer from the start, because we need to go to demand driven. In my company name it's food and agri, not agri-food. You start from the client and then you go to the supply. It's not often done, and I think it's quite important. The third element is in fact that to incentivize farmers, it's all about reward. And reward is of course also linked to impact. When you have a right impact, then you can also get the right reward and also the financing for this reward. So, and then I have the fourth element, that's more the policy recommendation. We need for all this a stable regulatory environment, clear rules, clear standards. I agree with the previous speaker, Ivo. We need transparency, we need integrity, also level playing field. I have some concerns about all the national strategic plans because everywhere they are different. So we need also some level playing field within the European Union. That would be my first contribution.
Thank you, Mark. Catherine, so you're founded Cultivate. Can you tell as an example a bit more how Cultivate is supporting the coordination among the different actors in the value chain, and maybe we can learn something from it as a room here, as participants here.
Okay, so I can tell you the small experience of Cultivate. It's a small cooperative we create here, 30 kilometers south of Brussels, near Jean-Blou and Louvain-la-Neuve. The base of our work is focused on soil health restoration. Our objective is to improve soil health and the quality of our food. We produce our crop with the principle of agroecology. And we want with the cooperative to be a leverage to implement this alternative at large scale. Our goal is to produce cereals with zero pesticide residue. And we think that plant growing on healthy soil produce healthy, nutritive food. And with this example, I will explain you how we can achieve this goal in a manner, a supply manner. The first step, we create a non-profit organization which supports farmers and give independent advice in regenerative agriculture. We have 60 farmers, members in the association, and they pay to receive this independent advice. This is not an advice from the firm. So they have an advice and they use less pesticide and new agroecological techniques. And it was the first leverage. And the second leverage, we think it's important to have investment and in the infrastructure and tools in Europe. And we have the chance to receive a subsidy from the Walloon region to create this cooperative of farmers. And we are equipped with storage facilities, dryer, sorter, to ensure quality storage of cereal for local transformators. Today, after 3 years, we are 40 farmers, 20 breweries, and 2 malting factories working together. And we work together with farmers and transformators to build a new model. This new model is based on a strong partnership between transformators and farmers. We create a B2B long-term partnership with a common vision. The vision to change something in the manner we produce food. The second solution we use to make is to make simple contract between the farmers and the buyer, and we have in this contract high specification about new techniques to use. And we use our small association to support the farmer with agronomists advising farmers on the new way to crop. So the second tool was the contract, and the third leverage is to evaluate the just price to pay to the farmer to retribute the effort done to go toward the transition practices. If agri-food system is profitable, farmers will always adapt this practice. It's not a difficulty for them. It will always go to the profitable supply chain. And our last leverage is the network. We are always exchanging information about innovation practices. Farmers are discussing always together with very simple tools like WhatsApp. They are seeding the barley just now, and I'm always seeding lots of information transmit together with a very simple tool. So it is our 3 or 4 leverage to implement all the very good ideas we have saw today. So thank you for the big work you are doing.
Thank you for this example, Katerina, on how you're doing this within Cultivate. So, Ivo, you're from the machinery. And one of the barriers always you hear when talking about crop diversification from farmers, but also from value chain actors, how do we get that machinery adapted? What's the solution there?
First, maybe to stress that our industry has always been very innovative. I mean, this is our sector, and we look strongly at market demand, but also, of course, trying to look in advance of possible needs, explore the markets, see if something can be improved, etc. So a lot of money goes to research. It's the only way we stay competitive. That's also why there has been a strong consolidation in our sector, by the way. And certainly with now higher uptake of precision farming, we already see that there is a lot more innovation ongoing also on not only just on the tractor side, a lot on the implementation side and on the robotic side, and etc., alternative drives. When it comes to the specific case of crop diversification, I think we have to make the difference between those practices where, there is a market, because it's more linked to big commodities, etc. So whenever there is a market, you will see that technologies will come. But I think certainly for more minor crops, as you call them, we would call them just specialty crops. And we have this discussion also internally. Specialty crops like vineyards, orchards, special fresh vegetables, some greenhouse production, certainly for very local markets, geographically specific productions or mountainous productions, all very small, all very in need of a lot of adaptations. Often, even in the same region, you need a lot of adaptations depending on how they cultivate. And that means that we have to also be very flexible in our development. and in the production of these systems. And that's where we have a bit of an issue. So we try to have as much as possible European legislation, but that means that often that European legislation somehow is not that flexible enough to accommodate. As long as you stay in the prototype phase, often it works. As soon as you go for full production, meaning that you have to deliver to farmers that you don't really know of, have such a strong bond like you would have with prototypes, then it gets an issue. So also for scaling up, that's an issue that we have, and that we actually are also looking at in how can we improve that. How can we make it also visible to policymakers that there is a specific need for these specialty crops, and how can we also have more specific research goals on evaluating and improving the situation of these market demands and the offer that can be made.
Thanks. Let's take a step further to the last topic. Discuss about public policy support and consistency between CAP instruments. So, I have an introduction here, but Emmanuel, we have you here on the table, and you actually also had your contribution already in the meeting. But maybe you are able to respond to that we say crop diversification is not there yet. It's not sufficient developed yet. We also had the suggestion also to make use of taxes to make a change. Is it something that is thought of in the European Commission or not? Do you already have an opinion about it or not?
As I explained before, in fact, in CAP we have different type of tool, and we have a toolbox. And in fact, obviously I refer to conditionality, and via conditionality we try to apply a principle of polluter payer. In fact, today is in relation with infringement with legislation inside of the CAP, because I talk about specific standards in CAP, but there is other legislation around the CAP. There is some legislation on, for example, on environmental aspect as Natura 2000 or some nitrate, directive of nitrate. We have to be aware there is as well pesticide legislation framework. There is some framework as regards, in fact, the list of pesticide, authorized pesticide, but there is as well a directive on sustainable use of pesticide. And I cannot preempt any discussion, but this sustainable use directive will be again updated, and there will be a discussion around that, and maybe I don't know what will happen, but as far as we know today, in fact, in conditionality there is a link between the payment for farmer and the compliance with some part of the sustainable directive. And I don't know, in the future, I don't know what we can see. Anyway, we have to reflect as well, but it's not our, I would say, competence in DG Agri, but in DG Santé there is already a classification of pesticide. We have to maybe to continue, but depending on the toxicity of the pesticide, and maybe would be a way to see if farmers use some toxic pesticide. I don't know, after it's just to reflect. It's under reflection. I cannot preempt any discussion at this stage. Just to coming back on, in fact, we talk about the need to identify, in fact, the impact. And to support what Andrea said, is in our CEP there is two pillars. We have improved the tools, I have mentioned, conditionality. We have some tool like eco-scheme to have more opportunity to reward the farmer. But at the same time, we will improve the monitoring and evaluation aspect of the CAP. We have to be aware of that, and we can go at more at individual level, and I think it's a big challenge. But we will as well, on the top of that, we will have a specific monitoring of the intervention, what member state will implement on the ground with the farmer. We will have some result indicators, and it's maybe a macro indicator. I cannot give you accurate situation, but we will anyway we'll classify all intervention from member state based on eco-scheme on Pillar 2 via some result indicator, and some result indicator will spot on some soil quality or water quality, and we have monitoring, global monitoring as well at this level. After we can go further step, more on individual aspect, as Andrea mentioned, but based on some specific survey, but as well based on what we collect. We will have a database at EU level, and database, I mean, we will register farmer by farmer, what farmer has declared for payment, and based on this claim and this declaration, we will be able to have more information on the parcel use, and it will be more elaborate as database.
Mr., can I add something?
Yes, go ahead. Yes. If you can do it short, because we're actually we don't have time, and I see the room, so we have to wrap up. But very good to react.
Yes, in our small experience, we need to differentiate our production from conventional practices, and so the pesticides. For us, it's very important to revise the standards concerning pesticide residue. We think that today we have a more precise instrument to measure pesticide, and that the threshold of the standards are too high. And so if we cultivate differently and we have less pesticide in our product, we cannot measure that, because the measure of pesticide and the threshold are too high, and so we cannot make the difference on our product. So if the European can change this legislation, it can help us. And if I can continue, I have
you always should stop at a sharp request.
And the other thing research can do for us is to the objectivation of this type of agriculture. So we need to demonstrate. It's not to accompany the initiative, but to demonstrate with articles, peer-review articles, that agroecological agriculture is real, and that it has a real impact on the biodiversity, on the groundwater quality. If we have all these figures, it will be easier for us to create new markets, because the problem today is that there is no market for this type of agriculture, which is different. And I have a last point, but
go ahead.
It's on the framework. If we have a higher standard level in Europe, we have also to impose this standard on the product we import from all over the world. And the farmer, they will not change if they are in competition with products from Brazil and Argentina, where we produce differently with other standards, and we allow this product to enter in Europe. It's a big, for us, it's very difficult to produce like them. So it's the last point.
Thanks. I want to apologize for the other questions that are prepared by you, but I think we really have to wrap up and maybe discuss at the dinner table tonight or somewhere else further on it. Maybe you can even include some of your preparations in the report of this conference. But I think I'm 25 minutes behind now, so I think it's also good to just wrap the day up and go to the final part. Thank you all for your contributions here as a panelist, for your preparations and sharing your views. Thank you.